If the Jets want to sell us on their vision and buying into this long-term strategy, they have to show us that they have a handle on the roster. So things like this are very important to earn the buy-in. There is zero reason for me to watch Allen Lazard reps. There's zero reason for me to rush back Josh Reynolds to see Josh Reynolds reps. You decided I've got to have A.D. Mitchell back in the Sauce Gardner trade. Now, it is his first week, so I'm not going to crush them if he doesn't play a ton because he's learning the playbook. But I want to see A.D. Mitchell play, and if he drops the ball, if he doesn't run routes correctly, you got to know what you have. And the same thing applies for Mazi Smith. Mazi Smith has to play. You've got to figure it out. Both football teams back in action over the weekend. One baseball team making news. And yes, I'm going to gloat about Matthew Schaefer once again here on the pod. Welcome in another edition of the NY Sports Index. That is Jamie Eisner. I am Chris Schubert, talking all things New York sports here on a Friday. Jamie, a lot for us to get into on the Friday edition of the show. Do we make the opening bell the story that just keeps on giving, the New York Jets?
Might as well. I mean, look, we did a whole show on the Jets earlier this week around the trade deadline. They're the most interesting team in New York right now, at least for this week. It'll fade really fast, but for this week, they're the most interesting team. Let's talk about some of the controversy that has come out since the trade deadline. In one particular move that we're going to talk about, it's on a scale of sports controversies. It's probably like a 2.5 out of 10, but I want to get your thoughts on this, Chris. So do you want to introduce what happened at linebacker following the trade deadline and maybe the impact that not only it maybe should have had at the trade deadline, but the impact it's going to have for the Jets defense from here on out?
Yeah, so Quincy Williams, who is a player that his name was very much thrown about in trade rumors ahead of the deadline this past Tuesday, and was somebody that, in all honesty, I was somewhat surprised didn't get moved ahead of that deadline. And he met with the media later on in the week and basically admitted to them that he's been benched. He's no longer going to be in the starting lineup, that he'll still be a part of that rotation, but he has been benched for his lack of play, and he has had certainly a down year. And this is a player who is the brother of Quinnen Williams, so he watched his brother get traded. He's a player who is a free agent at the end of the year, so can walk and go play someplace else next year, and a player that when he first got to the Jets was a mixed bag, right? A lot of potential, but it was harnessing that potential. He was a very boom or bust player. It felt like he was either going to make the big play or he was going to give up the big play, and he really turned into the boom player, but got rid of a lot of the bust, and it feels like, at least this year, the bust has come back a little bit in his play. And Jamie, you said it like a 2 or a 3 out of 10 on the scale of controversy and drama. I think in terms of the results for the remainder of the season, I would consider this a 0 or a 1. I don't really think it's going to impact how they play on Sunday. I don't think they're going to lose on Sunday because they benched Quincy Williams and they've had this drama all week. But this is where I want to rehash something that I talked about on Tuesday. The Jets bought in to a vision from Aaron Glenn and Darren Muji. They bought into a vision, and those guys retaining the keys to the car, the keys to the franchise. And I do think things like this matter when we're evaluating those two guys in their job, because I know they've been given the keys, and I know they're going to be here next year, but I'm still evaluating if Aaron Glenn is the right long-term answer at coach. I'm still evaluating if they made the right hire at GM, despite them going to have all these draft picks to make over the next couple of years. And it's moves like this. You knew you were benching him. You knew he's a free agent at the end of the year. You know his name has come up in trade rumors all season long, and yet you kept him around for what? To keep a disgruntled player around now and to have this locker room drama, even if it's only a 2 or a 3 out of 10, it's more than a 0. It's more drama than a 1-7 team really should have this time of year, right? Should be focused on winning football games and turning your season around and building into the offseason. And so it just feels like for a group that the ownership and the organization's asking me to buy into, it took 48 hours for them to do something that made me go, do you really know what you're doing? Do you really have a handle on things? So impacting the results? No, it doesn't change how I feel about the game on Sunday, but I said that I was uneasy about handing the keys to the franchise to these guys when they've only had 8 games together as a unit, GM and head coach. And very quickly, I feel a little bit validated in the why are we even in this situation in the first place?
Do you think there's any chance that they tried and really couldn't get anything for him? Do you think there's a possibility that he was available and it just nothing came to fruition, and now it's like, well, he's on the team, but we're obviously not going to continue playing with him?
Are you saying that you don't think there was a team out there that would have offered a sixth or a seventh or a pick swap for Quincy
I'm
Williams?
saying I want to present the possibility because we're not talking about this guy as a a great player at this
No,
stage of his career and how he's played this year. And the reality is, at the end of the day, yeah, we saw some huge moves, but I think there was only like a dozen total trades made at the deadline. So I'm just saying that if we have to entertain the possibility that maybe there wasn't an option for him, or they didn't feel like they were going to get something back for him at all. And at that point, maybe it just didn't matter. So like, all right, well, you're here for the rest of the year, but you're not going to start for us.
sure. I guess I would give them the benefit of the doubt if nobody picked up the phone and asked, right? If they never received an incoming phone call on Quincy Williams and there wasn't an actual offer put in front of them, then it takes two to tango. You can't trade somebody just for the sake of trading them, right? You can't trade them into just thin air. You have to have a willing dance partner who's interested in adding a player. But I do find it hard to believe that there wouldn't be a team interested in a pick swap in the seventh round or in the sixth round for a player
Potentially, yeah.
like Quincy
I mean,
Williams.
the reason I ask is because, and I know he's had a rough year this year, but Logan Wilson, a fellow linebacker who has had a better career up to this point, went for just a straight 7 to the Dallas Cowboys. So again, I'm not. We don't know. I haven't seen any reports that have indicated one way or the other that they turned down offers or that they received or they didn't receive offers. Like there hasn't been a report. I do wonder, just because of the way the sequence happened, and the way that basically just the player himself announced that he got benched, it just kind of feels like they were in a situation where they just couldn't get something at the deadline. And I'm like, oh, well, I guess we're stuck with them. Right? Like that's kind of what it feels like.
It does, but now you just look like you didn't know what you were doing, right? You look like you allowed a situation to continue when you were clearly open for business, right? Like you traded Sauce Gardner and Quentin Williams. So it's like you told everybody you were tearing it down. It's not like you looked at Quincy Williams and you said, nope, gotta have that guy to build around moving
Our Garrett
forward,
Wilson
right?
on defense, baby. Untouchable.
Right. That's not who he was as a player. And so to me, especially when you have a GM who one of the strengths of his early tenure here is he's been great at turning day 3 picks into actual tangible players, right? I mean, he turned day 3 picks into Harrison Phillips along that defense. He turned a day 3 swap into Jarvis Brownlee. Like he's utilized these day 3 picks, not to get players in the draft, but to get players on other teams' rosters who are going to be cut, and he's able to find some value there. You would think you would want more of those picks so that you can continue to do that because it's clearly been a strength of you as a GM so far. So again, it's not a big deal. I don't want to blow it too much out of proportion, but I do think that when you're trying to sell me on a vision and you immediately hit, we'll call it a speed bump. We won't call it a roadblock, a speed bump. You're not giving me a great first impression in the aftermath of what you did on Tuesday.
So let's talk about let's push this forward a little bit, Chris. What are you expecting on Sunday? They play the Cleveland Browns. Not the most exciting game on the schedule.
Really? You're not clearing your slate for this on Sunday?
Yeah, I mean, I might be watching some other contests here, but okay. I mean, what are you expecting from this team? I guess we don't know the starting quarterback yet.
It's going to be Justin Fields.
Yeah, it's going to be Justin Fields, but we're going to pretend like we don't know for some advantage that they're going to have. It is as much as Cleveland has struggled this year, their defense has played very, very well. And it's not just Myles Garrett, who's obviously an all-world player. This is a defense that has played really well. The Jets' defense got considerably worse since the last time we saw them, but it's not exactly like Dylan Gabriel's inspired a lot of confidence. So this is probably a Quinshon Judkins heavy game. We'll see how often and how excited and how engaged Breece Hall is in this game. But what are you expecting? Because despite everything that happened this week, it's still technically a winnable game for the New York Jets.
Can I share a take that maybe is hot, but I feel comfortable sharing it on this show?
Yeah.
Why are the Browns favored on the road in this game?
I think they think there's more confidence in their defense. I mean, you watched Justin Fields attempt to play football a couple weeks ago. I know the last game was good from him, but the vast
Right.
majority of the rest of the season was very bad.
I hear you, but it's not like the Browns wow you with points, right? They're not, they're not going to come in
They
here and score
definitely do
27.
not. Yeah.
So it does feel like advantage home team. So I was a little shocked. I'm gonna shout out somebody who I think does a great job in the Jets content space, Joe Caparoso over at Badlands, because he wrote a tweet this morning that I quote tweeted, and I'll read his tweet and then my quote tweet, because this is kind of how I feel about the rest of the season. He tweeted this morning, "I know I'm yelling into the wind, but it would be wise for the Jets to make A.D. Mitchell wide receiver 2 immediately. Alternate Mechie with Tyler Johnson, who has played well at wide receiver 3. Use Arian Smith very situationally as a backup and never play Lazard again. Also, let Reynolds finish the year out on IR." And I quote tweeted it, and this is what I said. "If the Jets want to sell us on their vision and buying into this long-term strategy, they have to show us that they have a handle on the roster. So things like this are very important to earn the buy-in. There is zero reason for me to watch Allen Lazard reps. There's zero reason for me to rush back Josh Reynolds to see Josh Reynolds reps. You decided I've got to have A.D. Mitchell back in the Sauce Gardner trade. Now, it is his first week, so I'm not going to crush him if he doesn't play a ton because he's learning the playbook. But I want to see A.D. Mitchell play, and if he drops the ball, if he doesn't run routes correctly, you got to know what you have. And the same thing applies for Mazi Smith. Mazi Smith has to play. You've got to figure it out. Maybe he fits in your system and Aaron Glenn can get more out of him than Dallas did. You have to know. And so for me, it's not about wins. It's not about losses. It's about we've got to identify what we have in players, and we need to figure out. We've decided. We've traded Sauce Gardner. We've traded Quinnen Williams. We can say that we're not rebuilding. We can say we're not tearing it down. You're in a tear down. Aaron Glenn and Darren Muji are in one mind and one mind only. I've got to evaluate which guys are my guys that I'm keeping and which guys I'm okay with moving on from at the end of the season.
So I'm going to mostly agree with you here. I would caution this for this week only. And it's that point you made of these guys haven't even been here like 5 days yet. So I would not be surprised if both play a limited snap count in their first game. And that's not abnormal for guys coming back in a trade. So, but I do agree that for the rest of the season in totality, A.D. Mitchell needs to be the wide receiver 2. He's the second most talented wide receiver on the roster. I mean, I think with that I don't think that's disputable. Whether he ends up living up to that potential and playing up to his talent level, that's still to be determined. But I think from just a raw talent level, outside of Garrett Wilson, he's the best receiver you got on the roster. And I do think that obviously everybody remembers him dropping the ball before the end zone and then basically getting benched at that point. I think Ashton Doolin ended up taking most of his reps at that from that point forward for Indianapolis. But yeah, I agree. Again, I will caution that you might not get the full workload for either guy this week. And I would say don't crush the Jets if you only get like 30 snaps from A.D. Mitchell. Like I would say like that's not necessarily indicative of how they're going to use him for multiple weeks in the future. But yeah, you are in a complete evaluation period with every single player on your roster because when you made the decision, well, okay, it's two parts. When you didn't win a game for half the season, and then also made the decision to move on from Quincy Williams to move on, from Quinnen Williams, not move on from Quincy.
Yeah, no, Quincy's still there.
Move on from Quinnen Williams and move on from Sauce Gardner. You've made the decision that you are rebuilding. You are not trying to win games this year. You are not competing this year. You are in the process of evaluating your roster in terms of a full rebuild to find out how you can get back into contention as quickly as possible. So when you've made that decision, that means every single position on your roster, from starters to bench players to practice squad guys, are open and available for you to get an evaluation on to determine who is a core piece of this team in the short term or is a core piece of this team in the long term, and who is either just roster filler or players that you can move on from this offseason. And so that includes everybody you brought in, and I don't think that they brought in A.D. Mitchell and Mazi Smith by accident. Those are two guys that have a ton of traits that were highly thought of during the draft not too long ago for either guy, and they're trying to see, hey, we're taking some dart throws here, as I mentioned on the Wednesday podcast. They're taking some dart throws here with valuable draft picks and saying, hey, maybe we strike gold here. It is not inconceivable that guys that are drafted this high, struggle in their first place and get a second chance, it does happen where they turn things around or at least become serviceable players. It's not to say A.D. Mitchell's going to turn into one of the 15 best receivers in football, but they're going to give him an opportunity to be a starting caliber player. And I think Mazi Smith will be the same. So I am with you, Chris. You need to evaluate everybody on your roster, but particularly those that are young and have term left on their deals. Veterans, practice squad veterans, and veterans with term only should be evaluated in terms of whether or not that we think this is a tradable asset or a cuttable asset. Everybody else needs to get that time because at this point, I would say aside from Brady Cook, I don't think you need to make Brady Cook a starter this year.
You mean you don't want to let Brady cook? You're not interested?
No. I don't want to let Brady clone either, but that's a different story for a different team and a different topic. That's one where I feel like you don't necessarily have to do that because I don't think anybody's looking at Brady Cook. Anybody reasonable is looking at Brady Cook as the long-term future franchise quarterback.
Because there's some pockets. There's some pockets of just Twitter
there
that's
always
very
are.
interested.
There always are, but we're not going to do that. So I'm fine with you. Whatever combination of Fields and Taylor you want to do at quarterback is fine. But for everybody else, they need playing time. And you need to see if they're going to be a core piece or not. And by the way, that includes like Breece Hall. What are you going to do with him? Is he a tag and trade guy? Again, is he a long-term piece for you? I think you're going to almost have to tag him. I don't think he wants to be there anymore. So I don't know if he's coming back on his own volition in signing an extension. So I don't know. We will see how this goes. But yes, Chris, to your overall point, the young guys got to play. The young guys you just acquired have got to play. I would say, though, give it a little bit of time if it doesn't all come to fruition this Sunday. If we're talking 3 weeks from now when these guys aren't playing, then I would say, hey, that we need to work on this coaching staff figuring this stuff out. But for this week alone, we'll see.
And I think the other reason why you ask for a player like an A.D. Mitchell and you ask for a player like Mazi Smith is because I think if you're worth anything as a coach and a GM in this league, like you identify those players that need a change of scenery. And if you're good at your job as a coach and a GM, you can get something out of those players. I mean, think of the best coaches in football. They take players, right? Think about and I know everybody loves to do this in Jets line right now, but look at what Sam Darnold is doing, right? Like if players have talent, if you can get them in the right situation and you're good at your job as a coach and you're good at your job as a talent evaluator, then you find something of value. And the only way you're going to know if you're good at that is by trading for these players and then playing them. Like I don't need to see Tyler Johnson's not part of the future. I don't need to see Josh Reynolds. Josh Reynolds is not part of the future. Like, do I want to? Am I okay with the growing pains of Malachi Moore and Azareye'h Thomas playing? And maybe they're going to give up some big plays. Sure, if it gets me closer to at the end of the season, knowing what I have in those guys and knowing if I have holes that I need to fill, or if I have players and I develop some really nice players with my day 3 draft picks, right? Like that's what you have to get to the bottom of.
Yeah, and to put a bow on this, there are two points I want to make. One is that most coaches always believe, both for good reasons and sometimes for arrogant reasons, that they can fix the guy. I can get the most out of them. And sometimes that leads to really great things, and sometimes it goes to, oh yeah, it's not there. The other point is really interesting because you look at the other sideline for this game, and something that they're going to have to evaluate down the stretch here is when they decide they want to play Shedeur Sanders. And the reason why I bring that up is you're talking about evaluating players and understanding who is a key piece and what is a position you need to upgrade. The Browns are going to have to make a decision as well. They're in that quarterback purgatory right now where they're going to have to decide, yeah, we spent a 3rd and a 5th round pick on quarterbacks last year, but are we sure either one of those guys is the guy? We have 2 first round picks as well. We can move up, or we might be able to get somebody at our first pick. So this is going to be an evaluation period for a lot of these teams. You will hear it talked about a lot from the quarterback standpoint, but to your point, Chris, it matters elsewhere. And to me, it starts with the 2 young guys that you acquired in the trade that were kind of the throw-in afterthoughts that could become pieces for the future.
Yeah, and I think this is a winnable game for the Jets. Even though they just traded away 2 of their better players, I still think they can win this game. Cleveland is not very good. They cannot score. So a pretty good matchup for your new-look defense without 2 really good players on it to go up against a Cleveland team that's not wowing anybody with the way that they score. Let's talk about the other football team, the Giants. They are taking on the Bears in your neck of the woods. You've decided to not go to the game. You've decided to not go to the game because it's going to be raining, snowing, and 20-mile-an-hour winds, which I think is a great decision by you.
It looks like they'll avoid the snow. at least, but it's still going to be basically freezing and heavy winds. So I will not be going to that game. Anybody that, does the whole thing where they go and they paint their chest and they go sit in the cold, God bless, not for me. Will not be doing that. I'll be watching them from the comfort of my recliner. But this is a fascinating game for the Giants.
Does your
as
recliner have a
well.
cup holder? Does it have one of those?
It does not. I wish it did.
It's unfortunate.
I wish it did.
How far back
doesn't.
does it recline? Does it go like all the way where you can take like a good solid football nap in that thing, or?
Pretty much, although I'm not really taking naps on Sunday, Chris. I also have the mock draft this week for the Draft Network, so I'll be working and writing that up. And got 2 Jets picks to make this
That's
week.
right. Take a quarterback with your first pick.
I don't, actually. Spoiler. I am going to be consistent with what I said about on the podcast when you listen to that on Wednesday if you haven't already. But this is going to be a fascinating game. The Bears are playing some pretty good football right now, and they're feeling really good about themselves. Caleb Williams is having some success. Rookie Kyle Monangai is having a lot of success out of the backfield. And the Giants are still kind of caught in this realm of it's Jackson Dart and not a lot else. And I would say this, my concern would be is if this game gets messy, this game gets sloppy, and this game relies on the run game, I'm going to trust Ben Johnson's offense and how that Bears offensive line has been playing right now to be able to pound the ball and get the job done more than I'm going to trust the Tyrone Tracy, Devin Singletaries of the world to do it. So I don't think this is going to go very well for the Giants. I do think they have some chances to be disruptive and to get to Caleb Williams. And if you're going to win this game, it's going to be because Brian Burns and Abdul Carter and company really make Caleb Williams uncomfortable in the pocket. But I don't really have good vibes about this game. It's going to be cold, windy, sloppy, maybe rainy, maybe snowy. I don't think this is going to be a good game for the New York Giants to play.
And it also could move us a step closer to Brian Daboll no longer having a job because apparently he was almost fired after the Denver game. That was been making the waves along Giants Twitter and Giants content over the course of the week.
I'm not surprised because I've never really anticipated they were going to fire him in season. I just don't think there's these days, unless you get to like week 17 type of that range, there's really not a lot of benefit to firing a head coach now versus later in the year. I know it's a thing everybody wants to happen. I tweet out the odds, everybody gets excited, all of that. But from a strategic,
you're doing that just to generate the replies. You know what you're doing when you put those tweets out there. Yeah.
Strategically, there isn't really much of an advantage. I would say, if you fire a head coach a week or two before the end of the season, maybe there's a small advantage of being able to get your search started a little early. But honestly, there's really not much. The coaches don't become available any earlier unless you're going after a coach that is not currently coaching. Like if you were zeroing in on Mike McCarthy, you were zeroing in on John Gruden, somebody like that, I guess. But otherwise, if anybody that's coaching now, they're not going to become available or eligible to talk to you before then. And unlike a lot of free agents, they don't really tamper a ton with coaches.
But maybe you want Steve Sarkisian or a college coach, and so you got to time it up to get them when their college season is done. How about that?
You could, although I don't think Sark's going anywhere.
No, but, I'm just.
But even then, if Sark makes the playoffs, when is his college season over? Depends on, you know what I mean? Like, so then there's a lot that goes into that.
When's the first day after the first round of the college football playoff?
That's the first day after the first round of the college football playoff.
That's the day that Sark is available.
Would be like January 2nd, so that'd be week 18.
So January 2nd is when Steve Sarkisian will be
somewhere around there
to be hired.
But again, so it's week 18.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like, that's what
I'm saying. So, right. Like, I guess all of this is to say, I don't think they're going to fire Brian Daboll in season. If they're going to move on from him, they'll move on from him in the off season. Like, they'll move on from him on Black Monday, which, by the way, I fully expect to happen. And they will. And I think at this point, it's inevitable. How do you not look back at that one season and say it's a fluke? Because every other season, aside from that miracle Daboll Daniel Jones year, has been exactly the same.
Well, and if we look at that year,
record-wise, exactly the same.
I mean, we can look at that year in particular. I can pull it up here. If I remember
isn't it
correctly,
like the first 9 games of every year with him has been 2-7, except that one season?
Yes, and if I remember correctly from that year, that was the year they won a bunch of like one-score games, and they played a bunch of really bad opponents. Like, let me
Yeah,
just look at this real quick.
and
So,
but they did win a playoff game too.
no,
So.
I'm not. But I mean, how's that aged for Minnesota? Right? It's aged pretty poorly there too. There's some question marks about what's going on there as well. Right? So
Yeah, you kind of want to play the Vikings in the playoffs, right? Because it just doesn't matter how good or bad they are; they're still the Vikings in the playoffs.
So that year where they went 9-7-1, he won Coach of the Year, and they won a playoff game. Week 1, they beat Tennessee 21-20. They beat Carolina 19-16. Week 4,
Tennessee wasn't bad back then, though. I don't.
Tennessee wasn't good that year, but that's fine.
Carolina was bad, yeah.
They beat Chicago 20-12.
Mid as usual.
They beat Green Bay 27-22. So Rodgers was still there. So that okay, that's
it doesn't matter who's in Green Bay. Apparently, they're just going to have a winning record.
They beat Baltimore 24-20. That's a marquee win. They beat Jacksonville in Jacksonville 23-17. They then beat Houston. They beat Washington late in the year. They tied Washington, and they beat Indy. But this is important, and I don't know if people talk about this enough. The first half of the year, they went 6-2. After the bye week, they went 3-5-1. And snuck in as a playoff team. So the writing was on the wall in the second half of the year that the team wasn't very good.
No. And I know they were the underdogs in the playoff game as well. They ended up winning that game. But yeah, look, the reality is I'm not sure they shouldn't have just made this move last year. But they didn't. And I would say, look, if there is going to be a lasting legacy, and obviously Joe Schoen is involved in this too, if all you get out of this at the end is that if Jackson Dart turns into your guy, it was still worth keeping Daboll another year. Because who knows if they would have taken a quarterback if Daboll's not there. You know what I mean? So I know it's a little bit butterfly effect-y to go back like that, but at the end of the day, I think Jackson Dart will be here. I'm coming around to your point of view. I think Joe Schoen will be here, but I do not think Brian Daboll will be with the Giants next year. And I also don't really think there's a huge need to fire him right now. Keeping some sort of continuity with Jackson Dart, at least for these final handful of games, is probably good. You're not competing. It's not like you're going to, we got to bring up somebody else before they get there's just no, at this point, there's no strategic advantage to firing Daboll. And I don't think he's lost a locker room or is just a terrible person, a terrible influence or anything like that. So let him play out the season. And then the Monday after week 18, sayonara.
I think there's one reason why you would do it in the middle of the year, and I don't think we're anywhere close approaching this, but if you begin to feel like he is hurting the development of Jackson Dart, then you have to pull the ripcord. But there's nothing.
That might be the only thing he's doing right now is making sure that Jackson Dart is prepared. And that's not to say that another coach couldn't do that. I'm just saying, to your point, Chris, the one thing that would be like, no, we got to get this guy out of here is the only thing he's been focused on for most of the season, for better or for worse.
Let's flip to the baseball side. We'll talk about the Mets. They were involved in some coaching drama this week. They also handed out a qualifying offer to their closer, who's going to hit free agency, one of 13 players to get the qualifying offer. Jamie, what intrigues you more? Edwin Diaz getting the qualifying offer and his potential free agency. Pete Alonso also opted out of his deal. Mets fans losing their minds that two of their former coaches are now in the division against the Atlanta Braves.
That one.
You want to go with that one? All right.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest with you more often than not, qualifying offers are just boring in baseball. They rarely get accepted.
Nick Martinez, the last person I think to accept the qualifying offer, the Red starter.
Yeah, Nick Martinez. There's been a couple guys that have done it. But yeah, usually it's a formality more than anything. But yeah, Chris, you obviously look. I follow baseball religiously.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I know the ins and outs of another team's secondary coaches.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
You asked me about Yankees coaches, I could talk to you about it, but I'm not going to sit here and say I could talk from authority. I understand the concept of losing guys that you like to a division rival, and not just a division rival, the freaking Braves.
Sure.
Which I'm trying to remember, but I think it goes Phillies 1, Braves 2, right, on the Mets hate list.
For me, it is in that order, but there are moments where
there are some
flip.
where it's flipped.
It can flip, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like the hate list is. I think it's pretty much like the Yankees. It's like everyone's clearly Boston is one. I still feel like it's Philly
Yeah, I would say
because I
so.
think there's a proximity issue too, especially for Jersey Mets fans. There's a
The thing
proximity to Phillies fans that makes it even worse for you, right?
The thing with the Braves is, in general, playing in Atlanta has been a house of horrors. So that may recently flip it for some people. And trust me, when Atlanta comes up on the calendar, like I'm very quickly reminded of how
Well, yeah,
much I
no, it's a
hate them.
rivalry game still.
But
I'm
yeah,
just saying it's. I still think right Philly's the one, but
I think it would be. Yeah.
so you didn't quite lose him to Philly, but yeah, I mean this is. I think this would probably be like the Yankees equivalent of not losing your two coaches to Boston, but like losing them both to like Houston or something like that. Because I think Houston now, just because of everything that happened in that scandal, has a special place in Yankees fans' hearts that nobody but Boston can beat.
Hefner doesn't bother me. The Mets chose to let him go, so he was free to talk to any team, and they didn't want to bring him back. And so, yeah, I mean, does the end result of him ending up in Atlanta bother me? Sure, but the Mets decided that they wanted to go in a different direction.
Yeah, if you're gonna get rid of the guy, that he's
right.
Only
Antoine
professional wrestling
Richardson,
are you allowed to get rid of guys and then tell them they can't work anywhere else.
Right. Antoine Richardson is a bit of a different example because it was clear that he wanted to come back. I tend to think the Mets wanted him back, but they couldn't agree on the salary. And so you feel like in that case, you did lose him to the Braves. You feel like they did come in and steal him from you. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to lose sleep over this. I'm just not. It's a first base coach, and I know the base running was such a big talking point, but this is not to speak poorly of Antoine Richardson, but when it was so in your face every single game of how much of an impact he had on the base running on that part of the Mets offense, it shouldn't surprise anybody that he went to the Mets and say, "I'm maybe your most important coach. You fired everybody else. You want to keep me? You got to pay me."
Yeah,
and the Mets said,
he should.
The Mets said, "I don't know if that's a standard we want to actually set here. We can't come to terms. We're just going to go our separate ways." Like, I don't know when you actually sit down and think it through why this should surprise you that the Mets and Richardson couldn't agree on a terms of a salary. And oh, by the way, I didn't know this, but you're only allowed to offer benefits and pension stuff to a certain number of your coaches on the staff. And the Mets apparently had already allocated that to other coaches that they brought in. And so they kind of got caught in between, and now he ends up with Atlanta. So I think the Atlanta thing bothers everybody more than anything else.
I don't like that rule, by the way. It's not the Mets' fault. There's nothing they can do about that. But
it's a baseball rule.
It's a baseball rule, and again, it's one of those unintended consequences. I understand why they do that. They don't want one team to just start loading up top options and just call them name other positions, and that, you know what I mean. So you're like, oh, we're gonna have 4 managers, but we're not gonna call them the manager. I get why they don't want to do that, but yeah, look, at the end of the day, and I want to be careful I say this because I am a big proponent of, even for big market teams, winning on the margins. Winning on the margins matters. And but I also want to caution this to say the lessons that the Mets learned for base running this year, they didn't get Men in Black wiped out because Richardson's gone. Now, that's not to say they're not going to be told to do different things. It's not to say that they're not going to try different things, and they might implement new strategies early on and see if they work. I understand that, but it's not like Juan Soto now all of a sudden is going to not know how to steal bases next year because Richardson's not there. That's not, and I'm not taking that away from him, but there are certain things that you teach and you're a good teacher, but you don't necessarily need to be micromanaging from that point forward. You see a lot of players, they have their hitting coaches that work with them, but they also, a lot of times they will do their stuff with their hitting coaches and they will go back to them if they feel like something is wrong. Mm-hmm. Not that they need to work with their hitting coach 5 days a week. Some players do, different cases. So I will say this, it's probably not that big of a deal. I think it's a bigger deal for the Braves in thinking that maybe that they can, that there's a strategy, same thing, like almost like when you had a pitching coach. Can you add something to the roster that we have to unlock pieces that they didn't know they had? I think that's a huge plus. But in this case, I at the end of the day, it's a base coach, and Richardson, absolutely. I don't know when you have a lot of opportunities to ask for a raise in that position, to be honest with you. So you absolutely should have. But I think this is going to have any effect on the Mets' ability to win games next year? I don't.
No, I would agree. So we'll keep an eye on the Mets throughout the offseason. Same with the Yankees, as technically they can sign free agents right now. They could sign somebody to a big time contract right this
I
second.
want to talk to you about something. I'm completely out of Murakami, by the way, and I know my
So
team is.
you've got. I'm in the same place. I'm in the same
Okay.
spot.
So I've watched him for a couple years now because this is a name that is not, it's not a new name. Sometimes you hear some new names that come out of Japan or South Korea and you're like, oh, I didn't actually, like, you learn about them when they get posted type of a thing. I've obviously followed Murakami for probably 3 years now. Last year was probably his third year because he's kind of been the guy that everyone's like, hey, he's going to go to MLB of sometime in the next 3 to 5 years. Like, this is the guy he had, I think 3 years ago was a tremendous power season, really kind of
56
got on
homers,
everybody. Yeah,
set
got
the
on
single
everybody's
season record
radar.
over there. Yep.
Here's my issue with him. As somebody that's watched him now over time.
He strikes out a ton.
Well, yeah, he strikes out a ton. He has regressed since. Obviously, you're going to regret. You're not going to put up those kind of numbers every year, but he has regressed, I think, significantly, even on the margins, over these last couple of seasons since his big year. I don't think he's going to be able to play third base at the major league level. I think he's a first base only DH type of player. The other aspect is you have to be able to not only project what a guy can do against major league talent, but you have to be able to project what they could do against major league velocity. And he, last year, I saw an interest, and it's known to be an issue, but I saw the stat.
I saw the same stat. I saw the same stat today.
Okay. And I knew this was an issue for him. Fastballs in the mid or upper 90s were an issue. And again, they don't throw 100 over there. Like those, they just don't. But I saw a stat this morning that said he was batting last year. I believe it was it 035 or 053?
So no, it was 095.
95, and there's some numbers against fastballs greater than 93 miles an hour.
Yep. And then the previous 2 seasons, he was better, but he was still below 200.
But it was still an issue.
Yes.
And so velocity has been a concern. Obviously, unless he's going to face Kyle Hendricks, he's going to have some issues with most of the starters and pretty much all of the relievers in baseball, outside of a couple dudes like Ryan Yarbrough for the Yankees, for example. So I'm out. I think this is a guy that at his peak is I should say his peak, but I think he screams to me. I forgot who the player I comped him to you. I think you and I talked about this a couple months ago, but he screams to me. I think his best case scenario is Spencer Torkelson. I think that's his best case scenario. I think this is a 20 to 25 home run guy that's going to hit 220, strike out a ton, be a below average glove. Does he have can he find a role in Major League Baseball? Sure. Do I think this is a difference maker in Major League Baseball? I do not.
I'm out because of the swing and miss more so than the velocity issue. I'm out because he strikes out nearly 30% of the time, and I worry about that.
Fastballs.
I worry about that getting worse when he comes over to the majors. His defense is abysmal across the board. You basically have to make him a first base and or a DH. He cannot play third base. He's got like a negative 92 defensive run saved over at third. Like, he's not good over there. And more importantly, you add all that up, Jamie, and you hear what some of the contract projections are for Murakami, and it's just my risk tolerance is not that high to give this guy a $100+ million contract when he has those types of issues.
Yeah, to me, I think people were hoping for Adam Dunn, and I don't think they're getting Adam Dunn. And I don't think this is a 40 home run guy even. Like, look, you can hit 220, you could strike out a lot. If you walk enough and you have enough power, you could find a starting role as a first baseman or a DH around the league. I just don't think we're seeing 40 home run power from him in the majors. I think it's much more likely this is a 20 home run guy, and I think this is much more likely this is a guy that doesn't stick long term. So I'm completely out on him. I know the Yankees have been rumored. The Mets have been rumored. I mean, all the teams that normally would be rumored to get him. I put it this way: I'd be disappointed if the Yankees signed him.
If you saw me looking down at my computer screen, if you're watching the show on the NY Sports Index YouTube channel, it was because I was frantically searching through Jamie's and I's Discord conversations.
It was Manzardo was the other name.
Kyle Manzardo was the other name. Yeah. Yeah, I
And by the
scrolled
way,
all the way back up to the conversation where
So,
we
and
talked.
obviously people like him and they go like, oh, but like, look at what Kyle Manzardo did this year. And I
And
think,
by the
again,
way, my response to you when you said Manzardo or Torkelson in reading our conversation, I
Yeah.
said it's fine to make him a part of your offseason, but he can't be your big swing. And I feel like a month plus later, I'm still in the same spot of like, I can't give him $125 million, but if I sign him to a 3 or 4 year deal worth like 50 or 60, like, sure, that's a flyer I'm worth taking.
And for example, like Manzardo this year, 27 home runs, had a 768 OPS. Like, I was just talking purely from a hitting standpoint. Like that, but Kyle Manzardo was worth half a win. You know what I mean? Like above
You can't
replacement.
give that
so
guy,
like,
$150
that's
million.
what I think you're getting. And you know, I like Torkelson, but I'm not talking about upside. I'm talking about the guys that they have right now. For example, Spencer Torkelson this year is better with the glove, by the way. He had a better season, but I meant not necessarily Torkelson this year. I mean Torkelson back in 2023. That 31 home run year, but the year he had 233 with a 758 OPS. He's better with the glove. But even then, you're talking, that was a 1-win player back then. Obviously, he was a lot better this year. This was his best year. But like, I think that's what you're getting. I think you're getting a 1-win player in Murakami that is first base DH only and has higher bust potential than he does boom potential. So I'm out.
I would much rather Okamoto, who can also play first base
Yes.
and has more contact skill. Maybe doesn't have the raw power that Murakami has, but is a more well-rounded player. But something to keep an eye on because I do think both our teams are going to be linked to him throughout the course of this 45-day window. And I think
a lot of fans of both of our teams are going to like him, and I don't see it. It's not for me.
My final word here today on the program: protect Matthew Schaefer at all costs. At all costs, save this man. And the reason why I want to bring this up is not just because of the way he's playing, but he went on the NHL on TNT. It was an off night for the Islanders, and he went on. And Henrik Lundqvist was the first person to ask him a question. And Matthew Schaefer, just as a kid, gets it already because he gives Lundqvist a hard time as the ex-Ranger for asking the first question when they have Liam McHugh, who's a Long Islander and an Islanders fan who hosts that show. He didn't get to ask the first question. That was how he responded. The whole the group there had a great time with it. And just for somebody his age, he gets it. And it's a big market. I know it's hockey, and so it's not football, it's not baseball, but it's a big market. People love the Islanders, and he is not only playing well, his teammates are protecting him. Like, he got hit the other day, and it was a swarm of Islanders
went over there
to go protect him.
What you want to see.
Yeah.
I'm glad to see that.
It warms my heart that he's not only playing this well, but it's clear that the team loves him. He's a good kid. He gets it. He's showing it in these media interviews, and they're playing well. I mean, the entire Eastern Conference is just kind of hovering around 500 right now, but they're playing well enough to be in the mix, and you can't ask for much more. So protect Matthew Schaefer at all costs.
My final word's going to be about the Giants, but I also would like to point out that the Rangers still have not won at home.
I almost texted you the other night when they lost again at home, and I was going to be like,
it's wild. You know what? Because it's, I don't want to get too deep into it, but it's wild because it's one thing where, like, if you're just a bad team and you have a bad home record, okay, whatever. But it's like they're playing great hockey on the road, and they're just abysmal. You know? Somebody brought up a scenario where they had a team once sacrificed a goat in the crease. It was a whole thing, an NHL. It was a whole thing about this. Maybe that's what they need to do: is sacrifice a goat at Madison Square Garden. I want to talk a little bit about Jackson Dart as we end this show, and it's been something that I've been thinking about a little bit. You've seen some Giants reporters mention this. You've seen some fans talk about it on Twitter, but you've seen probably the phrase "play style is not sustainable" a few times. I've done some thinking about this, and I also want to tie this into Jane Daniels. Another young quarterback in the division, suffered multiple injuries this year. Obviously, the rough-looking elbow injury in prime time in the latest outing. But and obviously I think that was a little bit different. But we've seen these quarterbacks get hurt on the move. We saw C.J. Stroud get hurt running. Part of what happens when you don't have good enough weapons is your quarterback tries to do a little bit too much, and they open themselves up for bigger hits. And Jackson Dart himself, his personality and the way he plays in general, even going back to his time at Ole Miss, he is a little reckless with his body. And that is only heightened by the fact that he's throwing to UPS drivers every Sunday. And no
Come on.
offense to UPS
Come on.
drivers. No offense to them, but they're not great receivers.
They're being
right?
replaced by AI. They're being replaced by automation. So you can't.
Yeah,
be
is that why all my
disrespectful
stuff's
to-
always late? now?
Right. Don't be disrespectful to the UPS drivers.
I'm not. No. I'm just saying. I'm not being disrespectful to the job. Then I'll just say me podcasters. I just know. I'm just saying there's UPS drivers don't have the best hands. That's all I'm saying. But to me, I just, you have to. We talk about finding the pieces long term and building offense around it. You can argue that Washington had some flaws. They trade their starting running back before the season. Yes, they get Deebo Samuel, but they didn't really get much else. Terry McLaurin's been hurt. When you don't have enough weapons around your young quarterback, the tendency for these quarterbacks is to play hero ball. And their version of hero ball isn't just chucking it up and getting picked off. Their version of hero ball is, well, I got to do this all myself. And while Jackson Dart has a little bit different of a body frame than Jane Daniels does, I do worry because that dude leads with his head. Like he thinks he's Cam Scatterbo out there. The problem is he doesn't have Cam Scatterbo's body type. And eventually you're going to piss off the wrong defensive player when you lean your head in, and he's going to blow your ass up.
Mm-hmm.
And if you miss time, that's a huge problem going forward. Again, he has somehow avoided major injury. He's been in the injury tent a ton this year, but he's avoided major injury. I just want to bring up this example of, if you want to change that play style a little bit, it's going to start next year with more weapons. Because if Malik Neighbors is open, if they draft a Jordan Tyson and he's open, if they bring in if these guys are open, he's going to throw the ball to them. And so one way to get him to play less reckless is to give him more quality options to get the ball to. So that is the other element. I know we talk about just in general of development as a passer, but just development into not getting chronically injured is also to get better players around that offense. It doesn't just mean protection on the offensive line. It also means having somewhere for him to go with the ball so he isn't pulling it down and running so often.
So he's comfortable, taking that one-on-one shot instead of just trying to run and extend the play with his legs. Yeah, it's a very underrated part of a quarterback's development. And I think everyone, when they think of building around, they just think of getting superstar players and building great offensive lines. But, it's about also keeping a quarterback upright and keeping him safe. And that means not putting them in a position to play hero ball. That'll do it for us here in this edition of the NY Sports Index. We're back on Monday to break down all the football action from over the weekend. If you're new here, please rate, review, subscribe. Do us a favor, share the show with a friend. You want to watch the program, 2 ways to do that: the NY Sports Index YouTube channel, or you can watch the show on Spotify. Everybody have a great rest of your Friday or great weekend. We'll talk to you on Monday. See you.